A very good evening, aspirants. Welcome to the Hindu newspaper analysis brought to you by Shankar Ice Academy for the date 1st of February 2022. So these are the list of news articles chosen for today's discussion. If you can see, we have chosen 6 distinct news articles. Today we'll be exclusively dealing with the economic survey. If you remember, yesterday our finance minister submitted the economic survey before the parliament. So today we'll be discussing exclusively about the economic survey. We'll be dealing with the data regarding all the 6 distinct news articles. So just pay attention to the video, and with this let us move on to the first news article discussion. Now look at this news article. This news article is based on the economic survey 2021-2022. Particularly, this article provides us with observations made by the economic survey regarding vaccination for COVID-19. See, this topic assumes importance in the pandemic from mains as well as prelims perspective. So please pay attention to the video. And as you know, economic survey is an important source of government data. So today, let us have a brief understanding about economic survey and its observations and data on vaccination. So to begin with, what is this economic survey? Basically, economic survey is an annual report card of the Indian economy. As it is an annual report card of the Indian economy, it examines the performance of each and every sector in our economy. And after examining, it also suggests future moves for sustainable growth and development. Have this simple understanding about economic survey. It was first published in 1950-51. This document is submitted to the parliament generally on the first day of the budget session. So the economic survey 2021-22 was submitted yesterday when the budget session started and after the address of the president. See, generally it is presented exactly the day before union budget is laid before parliament. So overall it is important because economic survey provides an context to the budget and it contains crucial insights into the country's economic condition. For example, it provides crucial projections like the gross domestic product, that is GDP for the next fiscal year, etc. So having this basic understanding about economic survey, now we'll see what the 2021-22 survey says about vaccination program of India, which is mentioned on today's newspaper. See, according to economic survey, vaccination is an integral pillar of the comprehensive strategy of Government of India for containment of the pandemic and management of the same. See, as we know, vaccination was started in January 2021 itself. The target was to complete at least the first dose to India's entire eligible population by 31st December 2021. So each phase covered different section of population, as you can see in the table given here. In the first phase, the targeted population is healthcare workers and frontline workers. It started on Jan 2021. Second phase started on March 2021 for above 60 years, and for 45 to 59 years, it started on April 2021. Third phase is for 18 to 45 years, which started on May 2021. Fourth phase is for 15 to 18 years, which started on Jan 2022. Along with this, we have a booster dose phase, which is for population above 60 years of age. This also started on Jan 2022. So as of now, the vaccination is available for 18 years and above. Note that for quickening the pace of vaccination across states and all age groups, vaccination access and pricing was deregulated. Very important point to be noted. Know that this was initially done under the liberalized pricing and accelerated national COVID-19 vaccination strategy. See, under the strategy, union territories and states and even the private hospitals were allowed to procure COVID-19 vaccine directly from manufacturers. So initially, Government of India procured 50% of monthly vaccine production by the domestic manufacturers, and the remaining 50% was procured by the state government and private hospitals. But in June 2021, the strategy was revised into the revised guidelines for implementation of National COVID Vaccination Program. See, under this, Government of India procured 75% of monthly vaccine production and provided it free to states and union territories. Then the remaining was procured by private hospitals. See, note these points. You can use them as value addition in your mains answer writing. Since they are mentioned in the economic survey itself, they are very authentic and you can use it blindly in your mains answer writing. Now coming back, apart from deregulating pricing, government saw distribution of COVID vaccine without discrimination also as an important feature of the vaccination program. So due to all these measures, the average daily vaccination rate increased fourfold in the period from May 2021 to January 2022, that is from 19.3 lakh in May 2021 to 75.4 lakh as of 16th of January 2022. Here you can see the fourfold increase of average daily vaccination rate. So until this period, according to the data displayed here, majority of the population in each category have been inoculated with at least first dose. Therefore, totally among the eligible population of 18 years and above, 93% have received at least one dose and 69.8% have received the second dose. Based on these data, Economic Survey is claiming that India's one-year vaccination drive has crossed the historic milestone. So in this regard, the survey has noted that vaccination has played a crucial role in minimizing loss of lives. Along with this, it has also boosted the confidence in the economy towards resumption of activity. And in turn, this has what helped in containing the sequential decline in output, which otherwise could have happened due to the second wave. So all these shows that vaccination has been a health response. Along with this, it also played the crucial role of opening up the economy. Due to this, the survey has suggested to treat vaccination as a macroeconomic indicator for now. As you know, macroeconomics provides a wide picture of the economy and sees how the overall economy behaves. For this, it takes into consideration the inflation, price levels, rate of economic growth, national income, gross domestic product, that is the GDP, and changes in unemployment. And now, Economic Survey suggested to add vaccination to this list to know the state of the economy. So that's all you have to know about this article. In this news article, we saw about the observations made by the Economic Survey regarding vaccination for COVID-19. We saw some of the basic informations about Economic Survey. We saw that Economic Survey is an annual report card of the Indian economy and it examines the performance of each and every sector in our economy. It was first released in 1950-51 and this document is submitted to the Parliament generally on the first day of the budget session. So to put it in simple words, Economic Survey provides a context to the budget and it contains crucial insights into the country's economic conditions. And then we saw about some of the comprehensive strategies of Government of India for containment of the pandemic and management of the same. So with these learned points, now let us move on to the next news article discussion. See this front page article. It is about the key points in Economic Survey 2021-22. See, the Economic Survey was tabled by the Finance Minister, Ms. Nirmala Sitharam, in Parliament on Monday. The second article here is about the opposition leaders' criticism of the findings of the Economic Survey 2021-22. See, former Union Finance Minister, Mr. Chidambaram, in a series of tweets, said that the survey repeated the fact that at the end of the financial year, which is on 31st of March 2022, the economy would recover to pre-pandemic levels. But he complained that it has taken 2 years to go back to where we were on 31st of March 2020. In a separate series of tweets, Congress chief spokesperson Mr. Randeep Surjewala claimed that the economic survey revealed intrinsic weakness of the economy and the gross economic mismanagement by the government. This is because the weak economy has pushed 4.6 crore people into poverty. So before getting into the details of these criticisms, first let us understand some of the key points of the Economic Survey 2021-22. The syllabus relevant to this article is highlighted here for your reference. Please go through it. See, the first and foremost thing that we see in Economic Survey is the GDP. In the Economic Survey 2021-22, it is estimated that GDP is expected to grow by 9.2% this year and is projected to grow by 8 to 8.5% in the year 2022 to 23. This is despite the growing inflation, the increasing energy price, and the tightening of the global liquidity. So the GDP is expected to grow irrespective of these challenges. Now let us see some definitions to have a clear understanding. First of all, what is this GDP? In simple words, GDP measures the monetary value of final goods and services that are brought by the final users, that is the people of the country. So GDP actually includes goods and services produced in a country in a given period of time, say a particular financial year. Just now we saw that the projection of GDP for the year 2022 to 23 is 8 to 8.5%, right? If you are wondering what is this is nothing but GDP growth rate. It is usually expressed as a percentage rate. If GDP growth rate accelerate, it may be a sign that the economy is growing, and if it shrinks, it indicates that the economy is falling into recession. Now moving on, we know about inflation, right? See, in common terms, inflation measures how much more expensive a set of goods and services has become over a certain period, usually a year. Now coming back to the article, see, the growth rate is based on certain assumptions. Make note of all these points, very important points. So while making the survey, they calculated growth rate based on certain assumptions. Firstly, it will be based on the assumption that there will be no further debilitating pandemic-related economic disruption. Secondly, monsoon will be normal. Thirdly, withdrawal of global liquidity by major central banks will be broadly in order. Fourthly, oil prices will be in the range of $70 to $75 per barrel. And finally, the global supply chain disruption will steadily ease over the course of the year. So they have calculated this growth rate based on these assumptions. Here you have to note one thing, the points which I have mentioned, all these are largely the disruptions that caused the economy to collapse in the first place. First is the disruption because of the COVID pandemic, and because of that, energy prices started to shoot up. Next, the supply chain was largely affected due to the border restrictions. So largely these points are the disruptions that caused the economy to collapse in the first place. So assuming these factors will normalize, by assuming we expect GDP to grow. So far we saw about GDP and the growth rate of GDP. Now moving on, we'll be seeing about economic recovery. See, one important point to note is, in the last year's economic survey, V-shaped recovery was mentioned. But in the economic survey 2021 to 2022, the V-shaped recovery was not spoken at all. If you are wondering what is this V-shaped recovery, essentially a V-shaped recovery means the economic recovery reverts to the trend of absolute GDP. That is, it is characterized by a quick and sustained recovery in measures of economic performance after a sharp economic decline. So after a sharp economic decline, if there is a quick and sustained recovery in measures of economic performance, then we name it as V-shaped recovery. From down it is going up. So it is a V-shaped recovery. See, because of the speed of economic adjustment and recovery in macroeconomic performance, a V-shaped recovery is a best case scenario considering the recession. Now, if you want to know more details about what is a V-shaped recovery or K-shaped recovery, go back to November 25th of 2021 Hindu newspaper analysis. We had made a detailed video on it. Now, coming back to the article, in the economic survey 2021-22, the V-shaped recovery was not at all spoken, right? And for this, the principal economic advisor said that this is because there was a sharp contraction after the lockdown, but the economy was revived in the second half of 2020-21. And again, the economy was disrupted during the second COVID wave, and again it revived. So I hope you can understand, it is not exactly a V-shaped recovery. We have recovered, but it is not V-shaped recovery. Now, even though there is a lack of V-shaped recovery, but still the chief economic advisor, Mr. Naheshwaran, he said that the theme of the survey is in line with the government policies pursued by the government. See, the intention of government is very simple. It tries to provide short-term support to vulnerable section, and this should be done while keeping an eye on the medium-term fiscal health as well as supply-side reforms. Here let us understand what is fiscal health. Simply put, fiscal health is the ability of government to plan, manage and pay for critical public services and investments. What does this word supply chain mean? See, according to supply side economics, producers and their willingness to produce goods and services determine the rate of economic growth, whereas demand side economics believes that consumers and their demand for goods and services are the primary economic drivers. I hope you can understand the difference. So, the policies pursued by the government include support to vulnerable section. It also includes balancing fiscal health as well as introducing reforms to the supply side of the economy. That is, introducing reforms to the producer side. Now, talking about the demand side, see, according to Economic Survey 2021-22, the latest advanced estimates suggest that there will be full recovery of all components on the demand side in 2021-22 except for private consumption. Here let us understand what the components of demand side of the economy are. The first one is private consumption. Private consumption is a measure of all the money spent by consumers in the country to buy goods and services. Second one is the government's consumption. That is the government's spending on goods and services which increases the demand of these goods and services. Third one is capital formation. See, this also creates demand because industries or public sector undertakings need machinery and other equipments, right? So by acquiring them, demand is created. And finally, exports. This includes the demand of goods and services by the foreign nationals. So according to the Economic Survey 2021-22, the estimate suggests that there will be full recovery of all components on the demand side in 2021-22 except for this private consumption. So now coming back, survey pointed out that when compared to pre-pandemic levels, recovery is most significant in exports followed by government's consumption and gross fixed capital formation. It is also said that according to the survey, India's investment to GDP ratio has hit 29.6% in 2021-22, which is the highest level in 7 years. This investment to GDP ratio is nothing but investment made as a percentage of GDP. See, this high rate of investment to GDP ratio has attributed to the gross capital formation. See, the government has focused on the cycle of growth through the capex and infrastructure spending, which in turn has increased the capital formation. Here capex is nothing but capital expenditure. Now let us understand what is capital expenditure. It is the money spent by the government on the development of machinery, equipment, building, health facilities, education, etc. It also includes the expenditure incurred on acquiring fixed assets like land and investment by the government that gives profit or dividend in future. So discussing all these, according to the economic survey, the growth in 2022-23 will be supported by widespread vaccine coverage, gains from supply side reforms and easing of regulations, robust export growth and availability of fiscal space to ramp up capital spending. Now another important point to note here is that the Department of Economic Affairs has noted in the survey that the coming year is well positioned for a pickup in private sector investment, with the financial system in a good position to provide support to the revival of the economy. So having done with the recovery part, now let us move on to the next major issue, which is nothing but the inflation. See, it has reappeared as a global issue in both advanced and emerging economies. The survey has mentioned that India should be aware of imported inflation, especially from elevated global energy prices. See, imported inflation is the inflation due to increases in the prices of imports. Increases in the prices of imported final products directly affect any expenditure-based measure of inflation. So, final important point to note in the article is that India has thus recorded a modest current account deficit of 0.2% in the first half. The survey pointed out that it is because the current robust capital flows in the form of continued inflow of foreign investment were sufficient to finance. Finally, let us end this discussion by seeing some of the criticisms of the survey by the opposition leaders. It is said that Economic Survey 2022 fails to assess the brutal impact of high prices on Indians. That is, the impact of massive job losses and erosion of incomes on people. It is argued that it ignored the divide. This is because of the fact that the income of richest Indians increased by 13 lakh crore and the poorest 15 crore households have seen income reduction of 53%. And it is mentioned in the article that the survey does not insist on stimulating the economy or reviving various sectors, boosting the consumption, creating employment and encouraging investments. This is because, according to the survey, none of it is a problem at all. But what the opposition say is far from the truth. So these are some of the criticisms by the opposition leaders, and with these learned points we came to the end of this news article discussion. In this discussion we saw three important dimensions which are mentioned in the economic survey. In the first half we discussed about GDP and GDP growth rate. In the second part we discussed about economic recovery. Finally we saw about inflation, and then we saw about the current account deficit, and we ended our discussion by seeing some of the criticisms given by the opposition party. So with these learned points, now let us move on to the next news article discussion. Now have a look at this news article. See, this news article here talks about some of the suggestions given by the Department of Economic Affairs with respect to MSP in the annual economic survey which was released yesterday. So in this context, we'll quickly brush up the basics of MSP, and then we'll see some of the issues in this MSP along with few solutions to solve the issues. First, what is this MSP? See, the price of agricultural commodities often vary due to various factors in our country, right? If a crop has seen good harvest during a particular year, it may see a sharp fall in its prices. Here, fall in prices means lesser profit for farmers. So, farmers may not sow the crop in the next year, which will affect the supply chain. So, to counter this, MSP is fixed by the government, which is supposed to encourage higher investments and production of crops. To put it in simple words, minimum support price is the minimum price set by the government for certain agricultural products at which the products would directly be brought from the farmers if the open market price are lesser than the cost incurred. So from this itself, we can infer that MSP is a form of government intervention, and this government intervention is to ensure the farmers against a steep decline in the prices of their goods and to help them prevent losses. As simple as that. Now, who decides this price? Know that the government of India sets the MSP twice a year prior to sowing season. That is, one for Rabi and other for Kharif season. Now, whenever the market price falls below the declared MSP, the government would purchase the entire quantity from the farmers at MSP. So this is why I said MSP is a government intervention to ensure the farmers against a steep decline in the prices of their goods. Now here, the key point is that MSPs are declared during the sowing season. See, this will help the investor to make a planned investment into a crop. Another important thing to note is the Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices, that is CACP, they recommend MSP for certain crops. So even though Government of India sets the MSP twice a year prior to sowing season, the recommendations on which crop should the MSP be given is recommended by Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices, that is CACP, and it considers various factors to determine the price before making its recommendations. Here I have given some of the determinants of MSP taken by the CACP. It includes some of the determinants like cost of production, changes in input prices, input-output price parity, trends in market prices. So based on these determinants, CACP makes recommendations on MSP. Now let us see the crops covered under this MSP. See, government announces minimum support prices for 22 mandated crops. Among these 22 mandated crops, 14 crops belong to Kharif season, 6 crops belong to Rabi season, and 2 other belong to commercial crops. Here I have given the list of crops which are covered under the MSP. In cereals it includes paddy, wheat, barley, jowar, bajra, maize and ragi. Likewise in pulses also there are some 5 varieties, and in oil seeds also there are some varieties. Just go through it. There might be a question in preliminary examination. So far we saw about some of the basics of MSP. Now let us see the recommendations given by the Department of Economic Affairs, which is mentioned in today's newspaper. Firstly, the department said that there is an urgent need for crop diversification in view of the severe water stress in areas where paddy, wheat and sugarcane are grown. See, just now we saw that the crops like paddy, wheat and sugarcane comes under MSP. But the issue here is these crops are water intensive crops. Just because MSP is given to these crops, these water intensive crops are grown even in the areas which have water stress. So here comes a problem. To manage this, the department has recommended crop diversification in these areas. Now moving on to the second issue. The second issue is the dependency on imports of cooking oil. See, India is capable of producing more oil seeds, and by increasing oilseed production, we can reduce dependency on imports of cooking oil. This in turn will contribute to GDP and GNP. But the issue here is there is no proper MSP committee to draft policies on all these issues. So the department has also recommended to set up an MSP committee to draft policies on all these issues. See the economic survey. The agriculture continued to be a major driver of the economy even in the pandemic era. The sector's growth rate was 3.6% in 2020 to 2021 and rose to 3.9% in 2021 to 2022. So such a major driver of the economy should be given a boost every year. So the survey has also recommended to increase the funding for agricultural research rather than spending on farmer subsidies or other expenditures on inputs. See, spending on agricultural research will also help in finding solutions for crop diversification and how to increase oil production in the country. So that's all about the article. In this article, we saw briefly about MSP. We saw that MSP is the minimum price set by the government for certain agricultural products, at which the products would directly be brought from the farmers if the open market price are less than the cost incurred. And then we saw that the government of India sets the MSP twice a year prior to sowing season. One will be for Rabi season and other will be for Kharif season. And then we saw that the Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices, that is CACP, they make recommendations on MSP for certain crops. Then we saw some of the crops which are covered under the MSP. And finally we saw two major issues and how to solve them. So with these learned points, now let us move on to the next news article discussion. This news article talks about the country's achievement in ethanol blending. See, it is mentioned in the Economic Survey 2021-22 that the ethanol blending has achieved an output growth of 74.5% from the previous year. So in this context, let us learn about what is ethanol blending, and then we'll discuss all important points mentioned in the news article, as they are all from the Economic Survey 2021-22. They are all important in both prelims as well as mains perspective. So to begin with, first of all, let us learn what is ethanol blending. Before that, know that ethanol, which is also called as ethyl alcohol, is an important industrial chemical. It is used as a solvent in the synthesis of other organic chemicals, and it is even used as an additive to automobile gasoline. Here, what do they mean by the word additive? See, additive means a substance that is added to something in small amount for a special purpose. So to sum up, ethanol is also known as ethyl alcohol, which is an important industrial chemical. It is used as a solvent in the synthesis of other organic chemicals, and it is also used as an additive to automotive gasoline. Just remember, ethanol is a natural byproduct of plant fermentation. So from these we can infer that ethanol is a renewable fuel made from various plant materials such as corn, sorghum, barley, sugarcane, sugar beets, potato skins, rice, yard clippings, tree bark, switchgrass, etc. As you know, these plant materials are known as biomass, and when this ethanol or ethyl alcohol is blended with petroleum fuel like gasoline or diesel or heating oil, we call it as ethanol blending. As simple as that. For example, if we say E10, it means that the fuel contains 10% of ethanol and 90% of gasoline. I hope now you can understand what is ethanol and what is ethanol blending. Now we'll see some of the uses of this ethanol blending. Firstly, ethanol blending helps us to reduce the country's crude oil import bill. This is because ethanol blending of fuel reduces the consumption of gasoline and diesel fuel made from crude oil. So it helps us to reduce country's crude oil import bill. Secondly, and most importantly, it helps to reduce environmental pollution. This is because ethanol contains more octane to oxygenate the fuel than petrol or diesel. So this is why it helps to reduce environmental pollution. And thirdly, it gives a boost to the agricultural sector. See, as ethanol production is dependent on the biomass which comes from agriculture, it gives a boost to the agriculture sector itself. Now, before getting into the achievements mentioned in the Economic Survey 2021 to 2022, we'll see the targets set by the government regarding this ethanol blending. See, the ethanol blending target for ethanol supply year 2021 to 22, that is from 1st of December 2020 to 30th of November 2021, is 10%. That is, the fuel must have 90% of gasoline and 10% of ethyl alcohol or ethanol. Apart from this, the government last year notified MOS emission standards for E12, in which 12% ethanol is blended with petrol, and E15, in which 15% of ethanol is blended with petrol. Government has notified emission standards for both these fuels. See, know that all these were brought into force to enable the automobile industry to manufacture E12 and E15 compliant motor vehicles. So this is the first target to be noted. Apart from this, remember, ethanol is also available as E85, which is also known as flex fuel. See, this can be used in flexible fuel vehicles. Here, by telling E85, know that this is designed to operate on any blend of gasoline and ethanol up to 83%. Apart from this, another blend, E15, can be used in newer light duty vehicles. This was also notified by the government. Now, seeing the targets, we'll see what are all the achievements mentioned in the Economic Survey 2021 to 2022 with respect to this ethanol blending. See, according to the Economic Survey 2021-22, the ethanol supply in the country is likely to reach 302 crore liters. That is, the ethanol supply under the ethanol blended petrol program is expected to exceed 302 crore liters by the end of ethanol supply year 2020-21. If 302 liters of ethanol is supplied, this is to achieve approximately 8.1% of blending. Here, you have to note that on the occasion of World Environment Day, that is on June 5th of 2021, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he released a report of the expert committee under Niti Aayog and under the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. The name of this report was Roadmap for Ethanol Blending in India by 2025. See, under this report, the center has set a target of 20% ethanol blending with petrol to be achieved by 2025. And as per the economic survey, if we could reach 302 crore liters by the end of ethanol supply year 2020-2021, then we can easily achieve this target set by the report. So that's all about the news article. In this news article, we saw about what is ethanol blending, and then we saw some of the uses of ethanol blending, and then we saw some of the targets set by the government with respect to ethanol blending. Then we saw some of the achievements mentioned in the Economic Survey 2021-22 with respect to this ethanol blending. With these learned points, now let us move on to the next news article discussion. Take a look at this article here. It talks about the cross-border insolvency mentioned in the Economic Survey 2021 to 2022. See, the survey has called for a standardized framework for cross-border insolvency. This is because at present, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, that is the IBC, does not have an instrument to restructure firms involving cross-border jurisdictions. The article also talks about the proposal to frame a robust cross-border insolvency framework, and it was also highlighted in the report of the Insolvency Law Committee. See, this committee recommended the adoption of the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law, that is UNCITRAL. So this is the context of the article given here. Under this article discussion, let us see about this UNCITRAL from prelims point of view. So what is this UNCITRAL? See, the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law is the core legal body of the United Nations system in the field of international trade law. Its business is the modernization and harmonization of rules on international business. As simple as that. See, this body was established by the General Assembly in 1966 itself. The organization is responsible for helping to facilitate international trade and investment. The law works on four main principles. First one is access, second one is recognition, third one is cooperation, and finally coordination. Just remember, the annual sessions of this body are held alternatively in New York City and Vienna, where it is headquartered. Now coming to the membership part, see, the commission is composed of 60 member states elected by the UN General Assembly. See, the member states are deliberately chosen to be globally representative. The total membership at present is 60 states. Therefore, it comprises of 14 African states, 14 Asian states, 8 Eastern European states, 10 Latin America and Caribbean states, and 14 Western European and other states. Just remember, 49 countries have adopted the law so far. It includes countries like Singapore, the UK, the US, South Africa, and Korea. Now let us see the principles behind the establishment of the UNCITRAL. See, with the proliferation of global trade in the 1960s, national governments realized there was a need for a harmonized global set of standards to replace the various national and regional regulations. Until then, these regulations had largely governed international trade. The need is felt because the disparities in national laws governing international trade created obstacles to the flow of trade globally. So in response to this, the United Nations established the UNCITRAL in 1966. So far we saw about the body, we saw about its membership, and we saw about the principle behind it. Now let us see the significance of this body. Firstly, with incoming economic interdependence globally, this body seeks to help expand and facilitate global trade through the progressive harmonization and modernization of the law of international trade. So, harmonization and modernization of the law of international trade is the key here. Secondly, its mandate includes dispute resolution, international contract practices, transport, insolvency, electronic commerce, international payments, security transactions, procurements, and sale of goods. Thirdly, UNCITRAL aims to formulate modern, fair, and harmonized rules on such commercial transactions. Fourthly, its work includes convention, model laws and rules, legal and legislative guides, and practical recommendations, uploading information on case law and enactment of uniform commercial law, technical assistance in law reform projects, and regional and national seminars on uniform commercial law. And finally, part of UNCITRAL's mandate is also to coordinate the work of other bodies active in international trade. This is with respect to both within and outside the United Nations. This is to enhance cooperation, consistency, effectiveness, and to avoid duplication. So these are some of the important points that you have to make note of. In this discussion, we saw about the body, United Nations Commission on International Trade Law. We saw about its membership. Then we saw about the principle behind the establishment of this body. And finally, we ended the discussion by seeing the significance of this body. So with these learned points, now let us move on to the next news article discussion. This news article talks about the data from Employees Provident Fund Organization, that is EPFO. See, the data is about the formalization of jobs. Note that this data is mentioned in the Economic Survey 2021-22 that was tabled in the Parliament on this Monday. Now in this context, let us briefly look into what is formalization of job, and then we'll discuss the news article in detail. Firstly, what is this informal sector? See, according to the International Labour Organization, ILO, the informal sector consists of all private unincorporated enterprises owned by individuals or households that are not separate legal entities. The people working in this sector are called informal sector workers. See, actually informal sector workers is a broader concept. It not only include people working in the informal sector, but also the people working in the formal sector who are not covered by the social security benefits. So the key here is social security benefits. Now let us see what is formalization of job. See, formalization of job means bringing these informal sector workers into formal sectors, meaning that the informal sector worker will come under a legal framework including tax, social security and labor laws. So this is called formalization of job. Note that formalization of job includes both new formal jobs and formalization of existing jobs. Now let us see what the Department of Economic Affairs said in Economic Survey 2021-22. Firstly, they said that the formalization of jobs continued through the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, it is to be noted that the adverse impact on formalization was lower than in the first wave. So this is the first thing to be noted. Secondly, they said that according to Periodic Labour Force Survey (PLFS) data, the urban employment that was affected by the pandemic had recovered almost to the pre-pandemic levels. Thirdly, according to EPFO data, there was 13.95 lakh net addition to Employees Provident Fund subscription in November 2021. This means that there is an acceleration of the formalization of jobs. See, the net addition to EPFO subscription declined in April to May 2020, but by September 2020 it reached 12.2 lakh. Again in November 2020 there was a decline. During the second wave also in April to June 2021 there was a decline again. Finally, as of November 2021, net addition in subscription peaked with 13.9 lakh new subscribers. Note that this is the highest in any given month since 2017. That's all about the news article. See, regarding the issues faced by informal sectors and its workers, and then about the difficulties in formalization of these sectors is discussed in our Hindu newspaper analysis on January 28, 2022. I request all the aspirants to view it to have a holistic view on the topic. So with these learnt points, now we came to the end of the news article discussion. Now let us move on to the next part of the news article discussion, which is nothing but the preliminary practice questions. Now look at this first question. Consider the following statements with reference to Economic Survey 2021-22. Statement 1. Economic Survey is a part of the budget document. Statement 2. It is prepared by the Chief Economic Advisor (CEA). Third statement. It examines the performance of each and every sector in the economy and suggests further moves. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? Option A 1 only, option B 2 and 3 only, option C 3 only, and option D 1 and 2 only. See, statement 1 is incorrect because when it was first published in 1950-51, it was initially part of the budget document itself. So it only contained a brief outline of economic development of the previous year. Then the survey was divided into two parts in the Economic Survey of 1962-63. The first part focused on broader economic developments, and the second part gave a brief analysis of different sectors. Then in the following years, Economic Survey was separated from the budget and is presented a day earlier as a standalone document. But the survey was made into two volumes after 1991 economic crisis and following reforms. So, Economic Survey of 1991-92 was made into two volumes. Each volume highlighted the macroeconomic problems and reviewed the various sectors in detail respectively. And since then, Economic Survey gone through a great deal of evolution over the decades. Sometimes it was one volume and sometimes it was two volumes. And again, this year's Economic Survey reverted to a single volume Economic Survey. Plus, it also has a separate volume for the statistical appendix. This appendix will act as the one-stop source of authentic data of the government. So the first statement is wrong. Now moving on to the second statement. Second statement is also incorrect. See, usually economic survey is prepared by the Chief Economic Advisor, that is CEA. But this year is an exception because during preparation of Economic Survey 2021-22, the post of CEA was vacant and it filled only few days before. So this year, instead of CEA, Economic Survey was prepared by the Principal Economic Advisor and other officials. And here the question asks about 2021-22 survey only. That is why statement 2 is incorrect. Now moving on to statement 3. Statement 3 is correct. We saw that in our discussion itself, right? It actually examines the performance of each and every sector in the economy and suggests future moves. So the correct answer here is option C, 3 only. Now moving on to the second question. Consider the following statements with reference to ethanol blending of fuel. First statement, ethanol is a renewable fuel produced from single-use plastics. Second statement, ethanol when blended with petrol reduces pollution. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? Option A, 1 only. Option B, 2 only. Option C, both 1 and 2. And option D, neither 1 nor 2. See, first statement is incorrect. Even though the first part of the statement is correct, the second part, it talks about production. Ethanol is a renewable fuel, but it is produced from plant materials like corn, sorghum, barley, sugarcane, sugar beets, potato skin, rice, tree bark, switch grass, etc. It is not produced from single-use plastics, so the first statement is incorrect. Now moving on to the second statement. Ethanol when blended with petrol reduces pollution because ethanol contains more octane to oxygenate the fuel than petrol or diesel. So the answer here is option B, 2 only. Now moving on to the third question. Consider the following statements about the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law, UNCITRAL. Statement 1, UNCITRAL was established by Economic and Social Council of the United Nations in 1997. Second statement, its mandate is to facilitate global trade through the progressive harmonization and modernization of the law of international trade. Select the correct answers from the code given below. Option A, 1 only. Option B, 2 only. Option C, both 1 and 2. And option D, neither 1 nor 2. See, statement 1 is incorrect because United Nations Commission on International Trade Law was established by the General Assembly in 1966. So the first statement is incorrect. Now moving on to the second statement. We saw in our discussion that facilitating global trade through the progressive harmonization and modernization of the law of international trade is one of the significance of UNCITRAL, right? So the correct answer here is option B, 2 only. Now moving on to the final question. Consider the following statements with reference to India's informal and formal sector. Statement 1, according to EPFO, the formal sector was on continuous rise since 2000. Statement 2, informal sector workers gets health care benefits alone from the government. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? Option A, 1 only. Option B, 2 only. Option C, both 1 and 2. And option D, neither 1 nor 2. See, statement 1 is incorrect because according to EPFO data, there was 13.95 lakh net addition to employers provided fund subscription in November 2021. In our discussion itself, we saw that there was a decline in 2020 first half, then there was a rise, then there was a decline, and there was a rise in November 2021, right? From that itself, we can clearly say that the formal sector has some oscillation. So the first statement is incorrect. Now moving on to the second statement. The second statement is also incorrect because the formal sector workers only gets healthcare benefits in addition to many other social security benefits as they come under the legal framework of the government. This is the reason why we encourage formalization of job which benefits both the workers and the government. The government is getting benefited because the country's GDP increases by bringing more working people under the tax laws, and on the other side, the informal sector workers, they will get the social security benefits. So the correct answer for this question is option D, neither 1 nor 2. The mains questions are displayed here. Please go through it, write an answer and post it in the comment section. With this, we came to the end of the news article discussion. If you like the video, like, comment and share. And do subscribe to Shankar IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you.